Valve just issued a small balance patch to the game and slipped it right under everybody's noses. There was no ping or anything, and they just appended it to the bottom of the existing patch notes page. And so today, I want to discuss the changes that they just added to balance out the two newest heroes in the game, Graves and Rem, because they've gotten enough data now to make some adjustments to these heroes. So Graves is getting nerfed, while Rem is getting buffed. As always, a link to the patch notes will be in the description if you want to follow along. Just scroll all the way down to the bottom, that's where the recent changes are. But let's get started by talking about Graves, who is receiving some nerfs because she has a very high win rate right now in most settings. She is a more average hero when you look at Eternus level win rate stats, but everywhere else she's pretty broken. And so what they've done to adjust her is actually very reasonable. So first of all, they nerfed the Jar of Dead's overall damage by about 18%. So now they do 16 damage per hit instead of 20, with 0.25 spirit scaling instead of 0.3. So they are just hitting for considerably less damage now, which is fair enough, but they will still absolutely do a ton of damage with the right upgrades. The second thing they've done is reduce the bounce-off distance when the Jar of Dead attacks the enemies. What does this mean? Well, if I throw a Jar of Dead here, they will attack, and now, when their attack is over, they will end up still much closer to the player than they were previously. This is both a buff and a nerf, in my opinion. It's a buff in the sense that it will be easier for the deadheads to maintain their targeting as the players are roaming around, because they won't pop out as far away from the enemies, and so it's less likely that they'll lose their target. But on the flip side, it is definitely a nerf because it makes it easier to actually hit the deadheads with a melee attack, because they're just going to be right next to you, and so you can just hit them with an old slap and they will die. And speaking of making the deadheads easier to kill, one final thing that they've done to the Jar of Dead is make it so that they die a little faster to gun damage, and so it's easier to clear these guys out in just 1 or 2 bullets depending on who you're playing. The last change they did is to Borrowed Decree's Tier 3 upgrade. The explosions, instead of dealing 5% max health damage, now deal 5% current health damage, and this is a very welcome change, because it means that if you are low HP, then these minion explosions won't do as much damage. Now, the spirit scaling component has remained unchanged, so they still do a lot of flat damage, but the percent scaling component doesn't actually matter as much when you are at low HP. You'll be doing less damage than before. And this is very, very good indeed, because, well, I mean, this thing also summons 3 of them, and so yeah, it was just ludicrously overtuned. I'm so glad they did this, and honestly, I would still even go further and maybe say lower the percentage down to like 4 or 3 or something like that, because these things are wicked strong. Alright, now let's take a look at Rem. He is getting some small buffs to just about every aspect of his kit. Starting with the Pillow Toss, it now gives you 5 seconds of cooldown reduction on all your abilities instead of 4 seconds. So this is a really nice buff to his overall tempo. If I go ahead and use Tag Along and then hit a pillow, I get 5 seconds shaved off of that cooldown. That is very nice. And it comes in tandem with a cooldown buff to his ultimate, so the Tier 3 now provides 55 seconds of cooldown reduction instead of 40 seconds. So a flat 2-second cooldown now, and if you hit some pillows too, then it'll actually be way lower than before. You'll be able to sleep people much more consistently. And they also buffed the Tagalong and Little Helpers, so the Tier 2 Tagalong has been buffed from 20% to 25% barrier effectiveness and item effectiveness, and they also gave a buff to the Tier 2 Little Helpers, where they provide 1.5 meters per second of move speed instead of 1 meter. So overall, just very nice buffs to each of Rem's abilities to make him feel a little better, because I do think he does have a lot of potential as a crazy busted support, but the win rate data just wasn't really bearing that out. At all levels of gameplay, he had a pretty poor win rate, so these buffs are definitely justified, and I like what they've done here. 2 more heroes got changed here, so let's take a look at Bebop, who is receiving even further adjustments. So first of all, come over here, let me put a bomb on you. The bombs now have reduced hit and kill spirit scaling by about 20% lower. So from 0.0025 to 0.002 on hit, and 0.0115 to 0.012 on kill. So a little bit less damage, but it's not all bad for Bebop players, because they buffed the Tier 3 Sticky Bomb very substantially. So they increased the duration from 3 to 5 seconds, That alone would have been nice, but they also added plus 20% fire rate for 5 seconds. So you still have the 5 meters of move speed, but you also have this fire rate now. That is very powerful indeed. I am actually quite surprised by that, because even just the duration bonus would have been enough to make that a really good upgrade, in my opinion. So, yeah, I guess Bebop mains do get a bit of a win this patch. So, to all the people who said, wow, I've seen enough, this new hero is overpowered, let's nerf Shiv again. As a joke, yeah, no, Yoshi didn't think you were kidding. He nerfed Shiv again. Yeah, okay, so first of all, they nerfed the overall damage of the serrated knives by about 12%, so even less damage on these now. Wow, they hate Shiv. The original nerf to the impact damage spirit scaling I already thought was really steep, but now, 12% less damage on this across the board. And they also nerfed his health growth per boon from 48 down to 45, so at max level now, he has 2,375 health, which is actually still a lot, but not as much as he had previously. So that's it for this patch. It's not exactly the biggest patch in the world, but it's nice to see some balance changes for the new heroes, because, yeah, they definitely needed some adjustments, and I actually think they've been very reasonable with the balance changes for the new heroes this time around, so super happy to see that. And, yeah, let me know what you think about these changes in the comments section down below as always, and subscribe so you don't miss out on any future update coverage from me. But with all that being said, thank you guys for watching, I will see you all next time, peace out.